There's an interesting claim our generation needs to confront. According to some researchers, today's children may have lower mental capacity than we did at their age. That sounds a bit harsh at first, but the person raising this isn't some internet commentator. It's a scientist who spent many years as a teacher and now studies how people learn. What they're pointing to is actually based on a very simple observation. For a long time, measurements showed an interesting trend in humanity. Each new generation performed a little better than the one before. Children generally scored higher than their parents, but at some point, that rise began to slow down. So, what actually happened? Let's try a small thought experiment to understand this. Imagine an alien archaeologist from Mars studying Earth. They're trying to understand human abilities from the past, so they look at military records. They find this. In the 1800s, soldiers could only hit a target once per minute. A few decades later, that number increases. Then suddenly, dozens, even hundreds of hits per minute appear in the records. The alien might think, these humans must have developed incredibly sharp eyes. But we know that's not the case. Human eyes didn't suddenly improve. Reflexes didn't miraculously sharpen. The weapons simply changed. Slow old rifles were replaced by rapid-fire ones. The people didn't change, the tools did. And the rise we saw in intelligence tests for so many years works in a similar way. People didn't suddenly start being born smarter, but the world around us changed. Education became more widespread. People stayed in school longer. Nutrition and health improved. Daily life grew more complex. And all of that changed the way people think. For a long time, this showed up as a steady climb in test scores, until some research began to notice that this rise was stalling in younger generations. But here's a very important point. That doesn't necessarily mean young people are less intelligent. Maybe they just think differently. Today, many managers notice something interesting. Young employees in the office can learn a new app in seconds. They're incredibly fast on social media platforms, but sometimes when a basic technical problem comes up, they freeze. For example, if a printer stops working, they might wait for someone to come fix it, rather than trying to troubleshoot it themselves. Some researchers call this black box syndrome. We use the technology, but we don't understand the system inside it. In the past, when a computer broke down, many people would open up the case and poke around. Check the cables. Today, most of us just call for service. Technology has made our lives easier, but it has also changed some of our habits. Now, here's the important thing. This doesn't mean young people are less capable, because there are other areas where the new generation genuinely excels. For example, they're quite strong when it comes to three-dimensional thinking. Growing up with video games, digital interfaces, and screens may have trained the brain differently. Maybe the brain is developing some muscles while slightly neglecting others. Think of it like an athlete. Someone who runs constantly becomes a great runner. But that same person might be weak at weightlifting. That doesn't mean they're not strong. They've just developed differently. And that brings up an important question. Can fast thinking and fast consumption replace deep thinking? Reading a long text patiently, sitting with a complex problem for a long time, are those things still important? Some countries are starting to take this seriously. That's why certain schools are returning to printed books and limiting screen time. But this isn't a war against technology. It's really a search for balance. Because throughout human history, every new technology has sparked similar fears. Even Socrates was afraid of writing. He believed it would weaken people's memory. When the printing press arrived, some said books would make people lazy. When radio came along, people said it would be the end of books. When television arrived, they said radio would die. But humanity managed to adapt to each new technology, every single time. What's different today is this. The change is happening very fast. The internet, smartphones, social media, artificial intelligence, all of it entered our lives in an incredibly short period of time. So maybe the real question isn't, is the new generation less intelligent? Maybe the real question is the new generation developing a different kind of intelligence? Perhaps our brains are now focusing on different skills. But no matter what era we live in, one thing never changes. Thinking is still our job. And maybe the most important question we should be asking ourselves today is this: are we using technology, or is technology using us?